This conference will now be recorded.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining another on a Technology Review Council session. Today we have Luis Novo, who is the founder, president, CEO, all-around talented gentleman on SCORE. And my apologies, as I sent the invite, I left the E off the SCORE, so that's my fault. so, but Luis, I would just turn it over to you and launch us in this. We've got a lot of ground. I will say to this group, we will be doing a second session with Luis and the SCORE product in a deeper dive. So we're going to kind of keep this at somewhat of a high level and go through it because there's a lot of material to cover. So Luis, you are on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and hi everyone, it's great to meet you. So my name is Luis and I am founder and CEO at SCORE. SCORE is a Brazilian edtech company. We've been around for about 4 years. My background is on software. I've been a Silicon Valley CEO, so I'm a total outsider to the learn and development space. It's been 4 years that my partner and we realized, hey, there's probably a different way to handle technology for education, especially in a corporate environment. We got really, really in love with the ideas and what we found out. So today, I hope we can kind of get honest feedback from you guys. We're going to show you what makes us different. And any questions or any feedback will be greatly appreciated. We're starting to roll out our US expansion. We have Jamie on the call, which is our country manager for the US. We're also expanding into Europe. So we would love the connections. We will love the feedback and everything else. Okay, and we can take this conversation offline if you guys want to continue discussing the challenges of learning and development and online training and those things. So is it okay if I start sharing my screen? I'll hide my...
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, if you don't mind, make it up to the presentation side, that'd be great. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Is this visible?
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. So just to give you a sense of why we're doing what we're doing and what we think should be different with the world, we think that technology should help people by understanding the unique context of each individual and each learner, right? And if you have an ability to understand the uniqueness on each learner, you can deliver a very, very personalized knowledge in a very in the right dosage, right? Even if the dose is not as big, you know what to deliver to whom and why. And I know I'm in a room full of people that understand the value of this and understand the world we're in today, right? We've been saying a lot about upskilling and reskilling and the challenges that we have with the complex, ever-changing world, job descriptions getting all fuzzy. So you guys know the drill, the information in excess, and also how hard it is to make people really engage when we present them with learning opportunities, right? So we want to take a step back and see how we're approaching this problem today as an industry and what we think is wrong with that. And I'm going to start with 3 acronyms that everybody here must know or is close to knowing. We have the LMS, which is the oldest software category for learning here. The LMSs have been around for 20 years or so. You have the LXPs or LEPs, the learning experience platforms, and you have LRS, which is learning record stores, which are places where we store learning information. Basically, why do we hire those tools? Why do we purchase these types of solutions? Is when we purchase an LMS, we're actually hiring the LMS to help us flow and control, right? We're asking the LMS to say, hey, I have this bunch of people that absolutely need to be trained with our anti-money laundering thing, and I really need to know whether they've done this correctly and so on. So the LMS is a tool that is focused on the administrator. It is not focused on the student, right? We all heard that, and we hear that from all the LXPs, which we go after an LXP today because we want a better experience, right? We want that Netflix-like experience with our learning solutions. We want to have more content options. We don't want to use just SCORM and very basic training materials. So there's a big reason why companies will float to the direction of hiring an LXP. And a learning record store is what gives us the evidence and the optimization, right? So the learn record store gives us, hey, these people really finished that training at that date, at that time, and you can use that for your auditing purposes, but you can also use it for optimizing the experience. The problem with those solutions is that managing a stack like this is complex, and all of them are rigid on their own way. So a LRS today is just a record store, right? So it's basically a database that collects information about learning across many learning tools that you have. It doesn't add nothing to that information, and it doesn't react to that information either. It just stores it, right? On the other end, the LMS has been long criticized for being very, very rigid with their courses approach and for failing to engage with the learners of today. And recent LXP acquirers, recent LXP customers all have same complaints around the fact that even though the LXP looks prettier and looks nicer, it's still a very prescriptive experience, right? So the LXP will tell you, hey, forget about the courses thing, it's not good, but here's my Netflix style consumption, and that's the real deal, and that's the only way that people should discover and find knowledge. We see the problem with this rigidness in this stack, and we came up with a different way to do this. So SCOR is a solution that actually replaces the three of them. So we replace the LMS, we replace the LXP, and we replace the LRS. And we call this knowledge orchestration. So knowledge orchestration has three components. One is smart aggregators so that we can help our customers acquire the content they need. Two, the ability to run multiple knowledge experiences. And I'm going to talk about that in a second because that's a fundamentally different thing about what SCOR does. And three, having a data store that is smarter than just a database of events. So I'm just going to go through the three of them real quickly, and for each of them, I'm going to explain the concept and show you a demo, if that's okay. It's going to be three very short demos, but we'll show around what we're talking about. So on the smart aggregator side, what we are helping our customers do is to connect with any place where knowledge is being created or where knowledge can be touched, right? So I'll give examples of this in a regular company scenario. Microsoft Office and Microsoft Teams are places where knowledge is being created. Your LMS is a place where knowledge is being created. Whatever Facebook workplace solution that you have or Slack will be a place where knowledge is being created, right? Even Salesforce can be a place where knowledge is created. All of those knowledge sources are spread across the company, and they are not channeling that knowledge to any common place. They're all isolated and fragmented, right? What our smart aggregators do is they grab that knowledge from these different sources, enrich them, and make them usable again. And I'll give you an example with a Slack account. So this is our own internal Slack account. And I'm just going to simulate here a user that goes to that account and just pastes a link of whatever thing they found online, right? Whatever link they found that was interesting and nice to share. So if you see in the emojis that were added, they were added by the bot that is running on Slack, and that is our bot. It's called PaperBot. And what the bot did already was that it already read through this content and identified within the content the places where topics were mentioned or where entities were mentioned, right? So basically, we pass this content through a natural language understanding engine so that we can see what are the topics that are more commonly mentioned by this team, right? So this happened automatically as the content got posted, and we separated what we think is useful about that. So we extracted all of the info about the content, we enriched it in a very readable article. So we removed all the web and all of the advertising around that article, so it's very easy to read. And now we're giving you insights on what are the topics that are common to your company, and you can actually compare your company's discussions with other world discussions. You can see, if my team talks about natural language, what are the other things that other companies are talking about in the same topic, right? What are the articles that they are sharing that shows that they are learning about natural language as well? So this is an example. Sorry, I advanced too fast the slide, but this is an example of where we're connecting to a source of knowledge that is not common. So knowledge would otherwise be lost within a Slack account, but we piped it very transparently. So the user doesn't even know this was captured if we configured that way. We can also let them know, but both are configurations. But the thing is, I took the content really, really fast. I gave it a very good enrichment. So I know what it talks about now, and I know what it mentions, and it's being pushed outside of Slack. So even if you close your Slack account now, all of that knowledge that your team generated is going to be saved. And there's just a lot of information in here that you might want to use in terms of who your experts are, right? So who are the people that are thought leaders within your channels? Like, that information is available, but it is usually untouched. This is what we bring in terms of content enrichment. The most important, the most special thing about our approach is the pillar of the multiple experiences and multiple channels. And it complements the enrichment quite a bit. So we know we live in a world where people consume content from different platforms. That is pretty straightforward. Everybody knows that. And we also know, as teachers and as leaders, we know that people learn in different ways, right? Not everybody learn the same way. So SCORE is omni-channel, where you can use our solution on the web, on mobile, on chatbots, through email, through APIs. So it's a very, very rich ecosystem of solutions so that we can get to your folks, to your learners, anywhere they are. But more special than that is the fact that we support multiple experiences. So I'm gonna give you examples of what experiences are and how coupled they are with the solutions today. So a course experience is that step-by-step thing where you got to do this and then you do that, and this is usually delivered by a LMS, right? There's hundreds of LMSs and they all deliver this type of experience. Then you have a Netflix-like experience where you see different types of content that are shown based on a recommender system and stuff like that. And you usually will see this with LXPs or with enterprise social networks, right? And you also have awesome experiences that are adaptive, like Duolingo or Khan Academy, just to give you examples. And those are also restricted to whatever platforms have implemented. So in other words, the experience today is coupled with the solution provider. You hire a solution to have each one of these experiences. And the way we looked at this was, what if you could have all of those experiences in the same place? So what I'm showing you now is a demo of a SCORE account that this homepage has been 100% tailored to the user, to their profile and their needs and their setup. But first thing I'm showing is our missions module, right? And the missions module really takes you back to the course idea. It has all the features that you would expect from a pathway / core course functionality. But then in the same product, you have this Netflix-like experience, and you have a product like Spaces, which is this one, which shows your content in a searchable, like beautiful library, right? So those are two very different ways for your student to interact with your solution. So I'm gonna show you yet another one, which is our adaptive learning platform. So you should remember solutions like Duolingo or Khan Academy, and the way they work is that they will take you to a very different approach. They're not going to force you to see the same content as everybody else, right? They're going to have you do this in a guided way where the system actually adapts to your knowledge. So what you're seeing here is a agricultural company, Bayer, training their folks in our adaptive learning system. So you see that I'm doing 5 answers here. I'm answering 5 questions. And what the system is doing at this point is it's measuring whether my answers are correct, whether I am sure about what they are, because I have to show my confidence here. It's also measuring how long it takes me on this page, and if I switch tabs on my browser, it measures that as well. So combining with this and a recursive algorithm, we throw back and we tell you how proficient you are on that skill, right? So very quickly, the system will check that I was just gambling, I was just answering things back and forth. There was no credit to what I was doing. So it gave me 0. And it also gave me content that matches with the questions that I failed to answer. And if you put this in a loop where they're answering questions and they're making this right and they're learning and they're going back, you may have a student that takes 10 times less time to finish your course because he or she demonstrated previous knowledge, right? So I can actually skip the line if I check my knowledge and I give you credible evidence that I understand about that topic. A fourth experience that we provide is a simple Q&A experience where I'm asking the bot what is, and Dicamba is the name of the product that we're selling, and like what is the product, and the bot will give me an answer without me having to come to the knowledge-based solution and search for things very kind of unorganizedly. I can just ask the bot, right? So I give you 4 examples of experiences that are running on the same platform, right? And there's a big reason why this is important, is because we can then select in real time what experience and what channel works for each of the users. And there's 2 ways we can do that. We can do this manually, like our customers saying, I want my field sales team to have a mobile experience with a chatbot, delivering articles a la Netflix. Or we can let the system decide by just telling SCORE what the objectives are, what do you need people to learn, and have us experiment with the right channels and the right experiences for each individual. I hope I'm not going too fast. I tend to get excited about it. If you guys want to raise any question, just unlock your mic.
Yeah, I was going to say, Luis, this might be there was an important section, if you will. It's a big differentiator for SCORE. So a question comes up to mind that says, okay, so this ability in the adaptive learning segment of really trying to understand what do I need to learn in multiple segments of knowledge, if you will. Who sets that up? Is that something that your system actually assesses and breaks it up and makes that happen dynamically, or is somebody in the learning world trying to set these up and if you will, chunking these segments together so that I have this set of things I can look at? Yeah, I don't know if I'm clear about it. I'm looking at who gets to do the
You
work
are.
on this one.
We realize that there is a case for both the extremes, right? So we have places where we are doing safety training, for instance, and we are connecting SCORE to real accident results and real kind of workplace trouble. So there is a high level of system influence or human influence in the configuration of the system, right? So there's someone saying, hey, we need to have this experience happening to the folks at the floor because we need them to certify knowledge to this. But you can leave some of that up to the recommender, so you can decide how much you want to force, how much you want to influence, and how much you want to leave open. So basically, when I showed you that that homepage, which I'm going to advance to right now, like when I showed you this homepage and how it's built, you see it's built from a lot of carousels, right? And those carousels have been picked by the recommendation engine based on all of the opportunities that were available for you, right? So the opportunities are ranked. So the company admin will say things like, if the user has less than 2 months, then the onboarding mission is really important for them, right? And these rules will get matched with this content and with the users in the system. I'm going to talk about that in the third item, but the short answer to your question is it's basically, it depends on the company to set up how open or how directed the system should be.
Okay, and I'll make it a very quick, short question, and that is, how much learning is the system doing so that it can give me analytics about? So, like you say, within a 2-month span of time, somebody's a brand new employee. I need to make sure that they're well oriented before we kind of take them out of there.
Perfect.
But now we're finding we're getting smarter on our recruiting and who we're bringing in, and the programs are better. Do you have a dashboard that's going to tell me a little bit more about that activity level?
We have a huge dashboard. We partner with Looker, which is a tool that was recently purchased by Google. It's a complete BI solution like Tableau. So you basically get access to an entire data warehouse with all of your knowledge events. But let me tell you how we handle data, because that's very particular about our tool as well. So basically, a learning record store will usually hold learning information, right? So they will have, like, that the user finished this course, or that the user, had this activity and he scored 90% of that, and stuff like this, right? What we do is our record store also accepts events from real world scenarios. So we also integrate with your solutions like your CRM or an ERP or other sources that could give us rich information about the user, so that we can use to build their context, right? And I'm going to show you a very specific demo on that. But basically, to give you an example, if you have your teams configured by country, you could deliver a different coronavirus training for them based on the country they're in, because you could use that metadata to say, if they are in these types of places, then this should be prioritized. But if they are on those types of places, then this should be prioritized, right? Doing this with SCORE is just basically setting up some of those rules and then enriching what we know about the user so that we can do this for you. So basically, what we'll do is we are going to enable you to respond to these events in real time. So whether it's by updating the product and updating the recommendations the product do, or by notifying a user or something like that. So this gets retro feedback into the recommendation system, so that the user will be received with newer recommendations. And to give you a demo on that, I have here on the right, I have a SCORE account, and on the left, I have Pipedrive, which is a common CRM, just a regular place where you manage deals and sales, right? And the scenario here is, imagine that the user of this learning solution is a score prospect, right? It's someone we're trying to sell to, and we give them access to that URL, and we say, hey, while we're on this purchase process, take a look at this and see what you like about in our solution. There's a bunch of videos, there's a bunch of blueprints, so go crazy, right? So that is the setup. And basically, we just created an account for that user with the same email that this person has in our Pipedrive. So basically, when I move this deal to the right, what it does is it triggers a function in our system that says the data about this person has changed. And if this person visits the website again, it's going to see a different homepage, right? And the reason why it's doing this is because now there are different rules that have just been activated because of this new condition. So now what I'm telling the system is that person is not a stranger anymore. That's a person that responded to our sales outreach. So let's enable more content into the product that is more relevant to that person. And then there is no limit on what you can do here. So I could just get into that contact on Pipedrive and create a custom field saying, this person is from sales, for instance. And I could have content that is specific to sales leaders. Or I could say, this person is junior or is an executive, and I can tailor the content to that as well. And if I go back and I undo the change, just go back to the website and update, then I just lose that condition again. So that is the reactiveness of our data store. What's happening in the backend is that we're grabbing all of that information, we're making sense of it, and then we're triggering a different data strategy in the recommender system based on that in real time. So you can build very, very different types of solutions with this. You can think of us as building blocks for knowledge, right? Or as an AWS for digital learning. You can build from the most simple compliancy type of training solution all the way to a system that mixes adaptive learning with real world data to optimize performance.
So do you want to stop at that moment and ask get some questions?
Yes.
Let me ask the audience, are there any questions you have of Luis right now? I've got probably 4,000, but I'll hold off for a moment and let the rest of the audience participate. Anyone have any questions for Luis? Please go ahead and open up your mic and go ahead and ask. And if not, in the absence of silence, we'll let them warm up. Okay, so what you just showed us there, Luis, I have to say, is probably as important as you were talking about in the adaptive learning component, and the whole thing of the experiences and so on. So what I'm hearing, let me give you a real type example, and let me see how we might approach this, and maybe that's better for the deep dive. But nonetheless, as people are returning to work, we know that regulations and rules and all kinds of strange things are being put out there at all levels. Be that from health services people to governments to just practical knowledge, and maybe even producers of consumer goods that would be antiseptics and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I want to be able to tell my population, hey, here's some common sense things that we would like to institute once you come back to work. Here's some things. Mm-hmm. Can I grab stuff from the net? Can I grab stuff from, let's say, a compliance site and so on? Bring those together as a little bit of the knowledge base, as you mentioned, and then start, in a sense, testing my population in their knowledge of how we conduct our business now that we're back at the best business. Mm-hmm. It's probably not a fair thing to ask you to build that, but I'd love to hear you do a comment, because then, to your point, it sounds like I've got a whole bunch of things that I could now tailor that, so Nov is in sales, and I want to make sure he understands that when he goes to visit clients, when that is happening, or he calls on that, or we do a demo or whatever, here are our rules of kind of how we want to conduct that. It's our culture, the way we want it to be dealt with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And the way that we usually approach it is from a multi-experience type of approach. So let's take your example, like everybody coming back, right? You have the ability to start by leveling everybody on using the missions capability, right? So putting them through a step-by-step, like 3 to 5 points you should know now that you're coming back, and that's a good way to level everybody up. And then you may say, based on these people's locations and job descriptions, I want them to have different requirements around what they must know, right? And I want to give them different options. So I'm going to have a Netflix-like experience receiving them on the homepage with a lot of cool stuff and a lot of very useful things. And I want them to just give hints to our system of what they like, because behind this, there's a recommender system that keeps eating those clicks and understanding what works, just like you have on YouTube or Netflix, right? So you do that. And then you realize that, hey, you know, there's these folks do delivery. They're very exposed. I still need them to be careful. So I want to make it very, very mandatory or very important that they achieve proficiency in this safety practice, right? And basically what that's going to do is that it's going to recommend that content to them until they achieve the 100% proficiency that I'm expecting of them. But I didn't have to do it to everybody. And if I gave that through an adaptive experience, then basically some people can have that finished in 3 minutes because they know it all and they prove it, right? They prove it by answering the questions in you know, the fair amount of time with a fair amount of certainty. Then you say, hey, you know, great, just go after your different challenge. You don't need to sit through this 1.5 hour exercise. And at the same time, the person that has some challenges with the content might need to spend double, right? So you could take that approach and say, you know, we'll start with a mission to everybody, and then we'll put some folks through a more hardcore experience. And these other folks, I actually want them in a live training session, which could be either physical training or Zoom-based instruction. And you know, for those folks, I think this would be the more appropriate experience. And you could be running, and our customers usually do. You could be running like a dozen of them at the same time, right? So it's different experiences that are designed for different portions of your audience to interact with. So it goes back to your question on data. Like it's really important that you can then look at this, get that feedback, and start learning that how people react, right? Like what drives more consumption? Is it videos on mobile, or are there clusters, right? Are there people that will only access using mobile? The field sales team, they don't carry a computer. Like, you know, we need to factor that into the experience. So being able to orchestrate who's going to be who is going to have which experience and for how long, this is kind of what we think as the role of the L&D, you know, in the future. Not just necessarily putting everybody through the same conditions that the infrastructure allows, but being able to use every experience. And if you need a fifth or a sixth way of learning, you can just build it. So these experiences are like open to build. So the actual customer can tweak them if necessary.
Right. So I know that in our second session we will get into the more detailed perspective of I'll call it the implementation side, the things I need to consider, prepare for, what I'll be responsible for, how I can use your tools, all those kind of wonderful things. So I don't want to belabor it.
We'll do
I'll again ask to the group out there again, are there any questions that you might have directly of Luis at this point? I know we're going to get into the dashboards and a little bit of the analytics coming out of it, which I think will be very exciting. But I'm curious about if you have any clients, Luis, potentially using, I like what you've called knowledge orchestration, because it's no longer learning. To me, learning is a little bit too constrained these days. I have content and I need to push it out to different people at different times in different manners. And so that idea of orchestrating the knowledge, I see this being as an extremely potential vital part of orientation for a new employee, orientation for somebody who's just moved to a new position within the company, even though I've been there for a while. It's going to teach me some things I don't know that then equips me or optimizes me to do whatever I'm going to do next better. And that, like I said, the instances of, let's say, having this idea of returning to work situation, we have learning for the staff as a whole. What do you do yourself when you're there? And oh, by the way, if you're a customer-facing person, let's say in a restaurant, as a wait staff or hosts or whatever the case may be, here's what we want you to know and be aware. Here's our policy about people coming into the restaurant without face mask or whatever. I mean, to me, there's so many moving parts right now. This ability to try to, I want to say, tailor a course on that for everybody in terms of their perspective. We lose content, we lose steps, we lose lots of things in there. So I think, what I'm seeing, and I'm kind of posing the question as a challenge to you, is there anything I've mentioned that you couldn't do in SCORE? Let's say as a restaurant owner, I want to train my staff to be.
There's actually more you could do. Like everything you said, and if you're a restaurant owner or if you're a large corporation, like all of those programs could be run. You could have a bot assisted Q&A so people can just take questions like really quickly. You could tailor your staff's training to their NPS rates based on customer feedback. Like all of those would be fair game for you to run with a platform like SCORE. You can think of us as like a blank canvas, right? It's like an Amazon Web Services. You can just build it out by combining channels with experiences and different contents, and then giving that some smartness and some life. You can build it for all. You can train customers and you can train partners. You can train employees. It works the same.
You could probably even train your customers if you put it out there in that fashion.
Hey, no, I have a question.
Please.
This is Steve. Hey, this is really interesting. Is it possible that the system would basically teach itself? So if it's connected to some sort of organization structure and the system knows the time that this person's been in the industry, the time in the role, the time in the company, and so forth, and the user is sort of deciding, hey, this is where I'm at in my role. I want to know this information. So that user goes and searches it, and it becomes, and then in the future, the system then decides, hey, for this type of person that is kind of in this, I'm going to start feeding that person the results of somebody else's search.
Yes, that's totally possible, Steve, and that works as a feature that is called goals. And you make a goal for a skill, and you say, I want to achieve this skill. I want to learn about this, right? So what you do with that is you hint our recommendation system to start feeding you with that information. And the way that it defines which information to show you is that it will look at users that are similar to you and content that they interacted with, and will bring those to your attention.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't know, as sort of the leaders of the learning and development environment, what do people want at a particular time in their career?
There's so much talent. Yeah.
Well, and Steve, to expand upon that, as I've spoken to Luis, and I want to bring this point to the audience, Luis mentions goals and so on. I see SCORE kind of being, and I've said this before, learning seems to have moved to the center of HR, and it's now more content management driven than a learning platform. But to your point, this could be tied to performance. This could be tied to succession.
Yeah.
This could be tied to even maybe even being, shall we say, as a hiring manager or somebody in the organization looking down and going, Nova keeps asking about these kind of things, and he seems to be moving in this direction. Let's sit down and talk to him about his goals and desires and so on. And if you couple this up with his assessments and all that other stuff, there's tools out there, but SCORE becomes the place where we know what Nova's trying to do. And I think that is a huge insight that I don't think we're seeing that.
And that's an analytics that most companies haven't tapped on yet. There's what if that accountant is into software development and you're trying to hire a developer like crazy, and there's passion and talent for that in your company right now, right? We don't know what people want unless we give them the option to choose. So when our system takes that approach and says, what should I try with Steve to see if it sticks, right? And if it sticks, I'm just going to show more of that and alert people back and say, hey, Steve likes this. Maybe you guys want to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think you make an excellent point, Luis, that I don't think I heard it mention that one, but this is a two-way street. This is not a me to the learner or the person who needs something or knowledge. This is a feedback mechanism as well within SCORE that says others who are watching this, what's going on in the company and how do we tailor things. So it's really it's a bit of a game changer.
What we do with this is basically we let the people's contributions on day-to-day to form that knowledge of what this company is talking about, right? So we had a case from a German car builder that the guy said, I thought people, when I asked them to research about batteries, I thought they were looking at Teslas and stuff like this, but they were looking at all of this Chinese stuff that I didn't even know existed. And that information would have been lost because nobody raised that in a report. They were just researching, they were just sharing with each other.
Does the engine that this thing is running on, can it like tie into, I don't know, other external, because in our industry we have tools that help us manage our projects, and there's a lot of back and forth and solving problems within that space, and it'd be just great to mine all that and have it learn.
You can do that with Asana, which is like a project management solution, or with Trello. And if it doesn't connect to Zapier, we can help you connect it. But Zapier has hundreds of thousands of solutions integrated with them. We integrate with that natively. So the Pipedrive demonstration that I've done was integrated through Zapier, like really fast. And that's if that doesn't exist, we can custom build a connector with the customer.
So if I might try that a little bit and extend it a little bit, Steve, to where, let's say your business, and so I go out to a site and take a look at something and decide what we might bid on this thing. I can either do a video with let's say the prospect's permission. Let me do a video of what I'm seeing and what we're doing, and that adds and comes back as a piece of knowledge. I would call that tribal knowledge at best, for lack of a better term. But I think that idea of capturing what people are thinking, doing, and find that it's a successful approach to something. In the health services area, I know that many of the hospitals these days are starting to recognize that the nursing staff, as much as they follow procedure, are finding some very innovative ways in which they treat their patients. And they share that in the break room. Why not share it in something like SCORE? And so you either type up a little blog, here's what I did and that seemed to really work, or here's a video of this, and it's an amazing thing. That I'm going to caution it for the folks in the HR audience there. We have to be cautious about privacy, but I think innovation and if you will, how to better an experience for something for a customer or patient, whatever, is really at the heart of what this is all about. How do I make my customers better? That's a better.
Totally. We're doing a project with the 70-20-10 Institute in the Netherlands, and it's a project with a hospital that has the aim to help nurses and doctors to improve their performance based on day-to-day information that we extract from the hospital system, which is not a system we usually interacted with, but we're building connectivity into that system, very like quick 2 to 4 week project, and now we're going to have per nurse and per staff data on performance, so that training can be adapted. And we're building this in partnership with the institute.
Right. And so as you talk about the health services, I know having worked with a lot of health service companies, that certification of nurses is always a difficult thing, and it's a very rigid thing, and they usually sometimes go to a lunchroom on their break and they take a certification course and come back the next day, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. This has the power of being able to, in a sense, create a study group around somebody. I just got through taking my certification. Here's what I found that's changed, and here's the kind of stuff that I wanted to know, and so on. And so literally, I see the application of this goes far beyond any company. It could go all to higher education, whatever you want to do. But this is really where you want to throw all your knowledge, all of it. Things that you do as a company, and communications that you do, the mission statements, things that you're putting out there for the customers, and stuff you want to put in internally so the employees know it. Just a ton of things on there. So my biggest question to you, Luis, where's the limitations of SCORE in terms of all the data we're tossing at it?
So there ain't a physical limitation on data. So there's 2 ways we can run. We can run in our cloud, or we can run in your cloud on the company setup. So basically, it's about throwing enough resources to handle your workload. But usually companies with 50,000, 100,000 employees, they don't reach a critical point where they damage a system. You usually need to have many millions of users to have any like real degradation. At least in our case, it's pretty easy to handle a company's like 50,000, 100,000 people in a different cluster. The limit is on how fast the technology changes on the content side and on the integrator side, right? So there's always new solutions being built, and there's always new types of content interactions being built. And because we have this inclusive approach, and you nailed it when you said, in doubt, just throw it at the SCORE database. Then that is how we built it. We built it to say, hey, save up all your knowledge here, and then decide which experiences and which channels should channel that, right? So in the best case, you don't let this information die with your Slack account or the Office account you just canceled. You just back it all up. Storage is really cheap, like it's cents of dollar per terabyte. So you can store it all up and decide to use it when it's appropriate. When we do the Jeep session, we'll talk about the way that data is stored. We open sourced it so that you can have your own knowledge database running without even being a SCORE customer, just to make sure that you don't die locked into your current LMS solution. So we'll go into that in detail. Yeah, it is our main launch for the year.
Yeah, and like I say, I would certainly encourage you all in the audience have received the invitation for the second session, which is I think the 25th of this month of June. So please feel free to come back in and we'll play with the system. Curious about things like security. So if I'm bringing stuff from the outside, let's say in a Slack channel and so on, I'm not worrying about where I'm going to a link for the data. Or are you overlaying a second security layer?
There is a Slack security, and then there is the Slack SCORE security, but you also have some fine grain controls where you say, for instance, for GDPR reasons, if you just install us in a random Slack account, we can't just pick people's names and emails and personal data, right? So basically, we can set up the system so that it takes their contributions anonymously. So it takes their Slack ID, for instance, which is an anonymous kind of identifier. And if the user chooses to share their private information with us, then we'll associate that with their names and their emails. So there's a strategy that needs to be applied depending on the different scenarios, right? But if we need to be more protective and more restrictive, that's very possible.
Well, and I guess that comes back to your point about I could have a private cloud or I could be in your cloud. So my question is, am I excluding myself from the opportunity to leverage what others have found? So, I mean, you're going to have, in a sense, the idea of you're partitioning me from everybody else as a customer. But there's got to be some commonality across customers. And I suspect the analytics that you might provide says, hey, by the way, you know, like Steve is in the construction business. The other construction companies or people in the building or even the supply thing are looking at these things. Would you like to see those things?
So here's what we do. In order to make sure that we respect our customers' privacy with their knowledge and data, the customers that decide to get this knowledge augmentation feature that we call, there's some rules on that, which is one, we don't share any files or any restricted links, like anything like from your Drive or your Office account. It's nothing like that. It's just we only share URLs that could be typed in the browser of someone with no access and seen as a website, right? Like a Medium article or a YouTube video, for instance. So if it doesn't behave like that, we wouldn't share it. And we only share it if it is collected in more than 3 different companies. So if this URL is connected by different teams, then we consider it something that we can share. If it's only shown in one team, we'll respect that team's privacy and not share the URL. So it needs to be something that is somewhat public, and you can completely opt out.
Very smart.
And
very smart.
With this release that we're doing for the open source repositories, there will be we'll be able to have public repositories of data that you can access without having to contribute back. Those would be like auto-generated RSS feeds that you can just plug into and bring that knowledge inside, but you don't have to share back. So that's the product that we're working on for the end of the year.
Very nice. So I see it's coming up to the hour. I didn't want to cut you short on your deck. So if you've got a couple more slides, let's go through that.
No, I'm done with the deck. I saved the rest for the deep session.
The deeper dive, yeah. And I think what we didn't see yet, but that I'm most interested in, not most, but I've been interested about all the data analytics and such, the analysis I can have out of this. So there's my little carrot for the audience, folks. Come and join us on the 25th for that deeper dive in the product. We'll talk about implementation. We'll talk about usage. And I'll put it out this way. I think Luis and Jamie are very open to both talking to you if you're interested, maybe even providing some sense of a pilot, whatever the case may be. And you know, I like I say, I'm very excited about this, but we'll save our comments then for that last session, if you will. But I want to thank everyone again. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Certainly, stay well, stay out of trouble. And Luis and Jamie, thank you very, very much. We'll see you couple of 3 weeks. Sounds good.
Thank you for having us, and when we see you again, we'll be very glad to demonstrate the more advanced analytics features. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you everybody for being here.
Sounds good. Thanks everyone. Take care.
Cheers.